Shantideva suggests that whenever someone harms us physically, we should remember there are two immediate causes of the suffering we experience: the weapon used against us and our own body. Since it is only when these two factors meet that suffering arises, at which should we direct our anger? If we direct it at our attacker or the weapon he or she uses, why do we not direct it at our own body? On the other hand, if we never direct anger at our own body, why do we direct it at the attacker and his weapon? To make sense of this argument, we need to understand why it is that we have a body that can so easily be harmed and is so prone to discomfort and pain. Our human body is described as a contaminated body because it is the result of contaminated causes. In previous lives, lacking wisdom and driven by self-grasping ignorance and craving, we created the karma to take on the contaminated body that we now have. It is the nature of a contaminated body to give rise to suffering, just as it is the nature of an old car to go wrong. Once we take on a contaminated body, physical suffering is inevitable. If we wish to avoid physical suffering in the future, we need to create the karma to obtain a pure, uncontaminated body. Just as a contaminated body arises from impure karma, created out of self-grasping ignorance, so an uncontaminated body arises from pure karma created within a direct realization of selflessness. Until we obtain an uncontaminated body, however, we need to accept that physical suffering is inevitable. Rather than blaming temporary conditions such as thorns or weapons for our pain, we should recognize that the basis of all our physical pain and discomfort is our contaminated body, which we have taken as a result of our own past actions. We all wish for happiness and freedom from suffering, but controlled by our delusions of attachment, anger, and so forth, we think nothing of creating the causes that lead to suffering. All the harm we receive is the result of the deluded actions that we ourselves have created, and so it is completely inappropriate to blame this suffering on others. What reason, then, is there for us to become angry? All the sufferings of samsara, even those of the deepest hell, are produced by our own actions. The torments of hell are not punishments imposed from outside by a god or a demon, but the creation of the severely disturbed minds of those who are suffering these torments. In the same way, the suffering we experience now is not imposed on us from outside, but is solely the result of our own negative karma. Even when another person attacks us, it is our karma that impels him to behave in that way. The other person is merely the instrument of our karma, and if harm had not reached us through him, it would certainly reach us in some other way. Other people are not to blame for our suffering. The only things we can blame are our own delusions and negative actions. If we wish to avoid experiencing unbearable suffering, the only appropriate course of action is to abandon all our delusions and faults in this very life. Once we gain control over our mind in this way, there is nothing in samsara to fear. We should be careful not to misunderstand this teaching on blaming our delusions. Our delusions and negative actions are to blame for everything that goes wrong in our lives, but this does not mean that we are to blame. We are the victims of our delusions, and it is unfair to blame a victim for the faults of his or her attacker. For example, if someone steals from us, this is the karmic result of an action of stealing we performed in a previous life, and thus the fault of our delusions and deluded actions. But it is clearly not the fault of the person we are now. It is not even the fault of the person we were then, for this person was only acting under the control of his delusions. It makes no sense to blame ourselves for the problems and suffering we now experience. Yet although it is not our fault that we experience suffering, it is nevertheless our responsibility to accept the disagreeable consequences of our previous negative actions and deal with them constructively. Another way to help us overcome our wish to retaliate is to investigate closely who actually suffers and who benefits when we receive harm from someone else. When someone becomes angry with us and causes us harm, we serve as the object provoking his or her anger. If we were not there, his anger would not have arisen. Why did he get angry with us? It is rare that people are angry with us totally out of the blue. There is almost always something we did to cause offence that served as an immediate condition to trigger their anger. But even if we did nothing, at a deeper level it was the ripening of our previous negative karma that created the situation in which it was natural for them to get angry with and harm us. The harm we receive is therefore the ripening of our own past actions, not the fault of the other person, and so we should accept it patiently. If we do this, not only shall we remain at peace now, but we shall also become free of that particular negative karma. The other person has actually helped us to purify our negative karma and to create the immensely positive karma of patient acceptance. Looked at in this way, the person who harmed us can be seen as the source of our happiness. If we step outside our narrow view and take a comprehensive look at what is actually happening, we shall understand that his harmful actions can in fact be a source of great benefit to us. What does our attacker gain from getting angry and harming us? Because we provided an object for his anger, he will find unhappiness in this life and plant the seeds for a future lower rebirth. In fact, therefore, we have harmed him and he has benefited us. If this is so, why should we become angry with him? By harming us, he has allowed us to practice patience, helping us to purify our past negativity and to create great merit. On the other hand, what have we done for him? By serving as his object of anger, we have allowed him to create much non-virtue, impelling him towards the lower realms. To become angry with such an unfortunate, ill-destined benefactor is surely the behaviour of a confused mind. If our true goal in life is the everlasting peace and joy of liberation and full enlightenment, material wealth is of little consequence. Only the internal wealth of virtue is of real importance. The enemy who allows us to practice patience and thereby accumulate an inexhaustible wealth of virtue is a treasure trove of incalculable value. Without him, how could we develop the virtuous mind of patience? Whenever we are harmed, abused, criticised and so forth, the opportunity arises to create immense inner wealth. The person who harms us, therefore, should be seen for what he really is, an ally and benefactor who fulfills all our wishes. The practice of non-retaliation goes against our deeply ingrained habit patterns, so it is not surprising if our mind comes up with many objections to it. Shantideva anticipates and answers some of these objections as follows. Even if I practice patience when someone harms me, won't I be reborn in the lower realms for acting as his object of anger? The answer to this is no. If we contemplate how an enemy is of benefit to us and practice patience with the harm he or she causes, we shall not be accumulating any non-virtue. As we have not created a non-virtuous cause, we shall not experience a suffering result.